Well, welcome to our Bible study for another Sunday evening. We are in Joshua chapter 4 this evening, and we're glad you're here to study along with us. Jared and Aaron and Ricky, and we were talking about the other day, if everyone knew how much fun we had with each other and spending time with each other and doing stuff like this, everyone would want to go into ministry. But we have a good time preparing for these classes and doing them, and we hope that you are learning but enjoying the study as much as we are. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, we're in Joshua 4, and Aaron led us through a study last Sunday night with the children of Israel crossing over the Jordan River, and it's very much connected with what we see in chapter 4 as well, because now we're going to set up some memorials about what has taken place here, and 12 stones for the memorial that we'll talk about. The men who are going to carry these were actually selected in chapter 3, but we're going to see what it is that they were chosen for and what they're going to do as they head over to Gilgal, which is about 5 miles from the river and 2 miles from Jericho, and see what they're going to do. Memorials, though, are a good thing. You know, I used to work in the monument business and set up lots of memorials for veterans and for individuals and whatnot. And we have lots of memorials in our lives, and we'll talk about some of those maybe at the end if we have time. But let's get into the text itself. Jared, if you would, read for us verses 1 through 3.
All right. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, Take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight." Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe.
All right, so you've got the plans that we talked about in chapter 3. Aaron pointed out that you've got God telling Joshua, and then Joshua turns around and tells the people. Right. That's where he's getting his instructions for. So what's significant about the plan here that we've got?
That's a good question. You know, we can't wait for you to tell us.
Well, how did he set this up?
This is the fun that we have.
We pick on each other all the time.
How did God want this accomplished? Did he, just grab some stones, or what are we seeing here?
Well, I think the significance maybe that you're asking about is that the stones are coming from the midst of the Jordan, which is where the ark is. If you'll remember from last week, the ark led them out, but then it stayed in the middle of the Jordan as the people passed over. So that's where the stones are coming from. The stones are coming from the proximity of the ark in that middle area.
Yeah, Ricky?
Where they're walking on dry ground,
right?
Yes.
Which was because of the Lord. That's what they remember. But how many people who's the people responsible for this, to do this?
Well, God the one who gave the instructions, but there are 12 men. Mm-hmm. Okay, one from each tribe, so we see the 12 from that. But some commentators take that number and look to the New Testament. How many apostles did Jesus call? He called 12 apostles. And so there's some correlation to that. But I think the reason why there were 12 men chosen is which tribe was left out? None. Mm-hmm. See, and so one from every tribe. So every tribe was involved in this process.
Well, and you've got the two tribes that already had their land on that side of on the other side of the Jordan River. They are coming across as well. At least the men that are making up the army. Right. They're coming across too, because that was what they were supposed to do, is come across and help conquer the promised land.
That's right.
Conquer is probably not the right word. Take the promised land, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so Aaron, if you would read verses 4 through 8 for us, please.
Okay. Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in a time to come, What do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever.
Okay. So verse 8, it says that they actually did that, what he had told them to do. But Joshua passes on information from the Lord. And why is this memorial so important?
So they can pass it on to the children, teach their children with it.
Yeah.
So they don't forget. So they continue to remember, again, what's been done
By
God.
By God.
I thought it's significant going back up to verse 3. When they took the stone, they didn't just go and lay it in a pile or anything. They took it back to where they were and lodged that night. So again, you're taking this stone back to your tribe, and it's there. And so people are all looking at this stone, and what's going through their mind when they see that stone? Today we walked across the Jordan, on dry ground, and this stone is reminding me of that right now as I think about what took place today.
At this point, too, before they kind of build this memorial out of it, it's almost kind of like, not exactly, but it's almost kind of like when you go on vacation and you go to the Cincinnati Zoo. We just went there. That's the first thing that popped in my head. You buy something to remember that by, or you take pictures to remember that by. There's some kind of object, something to help you remember it. And
we do magnets. That's what we do.
Yeah,
You put them on the refrigerator.
There's
souvenirs.
Souvenir. And souvenir makes it sound cheap almost.
Sure.
But that's not what's going on here. It's not cheap. But there's this stone that they've got, and it's with them, and this is to help us remember. This stone is because of what God did.
But a lot of people even do that today. There's a lot of people when they travel to different places, they will pick up a rock wherever they've been. And they'll take that home, and you walk in their house and they've got a shelf somewhere, and you see all these little rocks, and you're like, what are those?
Or you go to the beach and you pick up a shell that you find on the beach or something like that. By the way, I don't want any sand. No sand. I don't like sand. Jeff Capps, I'll say it again. Jeff Capps, I do not like sand.
Yeah. When we went to Israel, I thought we were going to get thrown in prison because Melody had so many rocks and salt from the bottom of the Dead Sea and all that kind of stuff that we picked up. But I remember when we first came to Martin and going into Ricky's office, and he showed me around his office, and I went with my son to the Coca-Cola plant and to the to the College Football Hall of Fame and all these different things that he's showing me. But it's good memories. Right. We don't want souvenirs of bad times. Right. But
we'll get rid of those.
That's right. But this is a great thing to remember.
So that's what went through my mind when they took that rock back to the tribe that night. They're all sitting around in the evening after the event and going, that was just an amazing thing that took place today. And to dwell upon.
So it's a reminder for them, but also, as you said earlier, a reminder for their children. Right. To give them a teaching moment.
And we do that same thing too, even with an object. Hey, this is something that's been passed down in my family from generation to generation that my great grandmother had, or whatever it is. We pass those things down. It's to help remember events or significant moments in our family's lives.
That's right. Yep. All right, Ricky, if you would read verses 9 and 10 for us, please.
Then Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priest who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood, and they are there to this day. So the priest who bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord had commanded Joshua to speak to the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua, and the people hurried and crossed over.
Okay, so the priest, which, by the way, normally the priests weren't the ones that carried around the Ark of the Covenant. It was Levites, but I don't know if it's because of the special nature of what they're doing is why they have the priests. But they walk out on the dry ground. All the people go across. The 12 come back and get the stones, and they're sitting there this entire time. And then after they get the stones over, what happens? Verse 9.
Oh, okay.
It's one of them days.
What do they do with the stones?
It's what it is.
I'm not doing a good job. I'm not being a good John Stockton and setting them up well.
Well, there's two memorials going on, right?
Right. There's two sets of stones.
Yeah, two
Right.
sets of stones. And so, what are we talking about? The second set here?
The second
Okay,
set.
the second set. They are actually going back to the middle of the river where
Who's
the ark
going back?
was. The that's a good question.
12 men.
12 men. Okay, just checking. Corey's going to get me one of these days, but they're building a memorial right there where the ark was.
In the middle,
Yes.
you know.
And
So-
Joshua's building this. So why put one out in the middle of the river?
That is a good question.
Because that's the exact place where they stood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so in the time of year when the Jordan River would be down, and anyone who made that crossing, if they came and saw that, they would say, "That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I walked right by where those stones are.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the ark was."
Yeah, and they would have seen it when the river was down. I thought about when I was thinking about this, like on the beaches of Normandy, there's monuments for D-Day,
Mhm.
but we also have those memorials here in the United States to memorialize those. And if you're there, here's the significance of this place. But if you're here, still remember, what was done at that place. So, so you've got this monument that's being built that would be a sign for the people of where it happened. And again, I think it's interesting. The priests stand there until all this happens. That's we sometimes complain about
They're just hanging out with
Yeah.
the Ark of the Covenant.
just hanging with the covenant. But you think about how that we sometimes maybe look down on tasks that we think aren't very, I don't know, exciting. That wouldn't have been an exciting task per se, but it's all in how you look at it.
But we probably ought to make mention here how they carried the ark.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we just say they stood there and held the ark. Well, they didn't just each grab a corner of it. There
Right.
were the staves that went through
Right.
it, and so it was on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And so they stood there. I don't know how long it would take 2 million people to walk across,
Time.
but it would be quite long. I'm sure it wasn't single file,
No.
but still 2 million people. And so they stood there a long time. And when they all got on dry ground, and then they waited on the 12 men to come and set up this memorial.
Mm-hmm.
But they were standing there and had the staves on their shoulders holding the ark all that time.
Well, I guess sometimes you talk about the length of time it takes. Sometimes we want to hurry up and get something done, and we don't think about the importance of it because we're just trying to get the task done.
Mm-hmm.
And I could totally see that being somebody there. Well, let's just everybody's already across. Let's just go ahead and go. But no, this was important enough that we're going to take the time for those 12 men to bring these stones back and us build this memorial here in the middle of the river.
It makes me think, we just did Thanksgiving and just had Thanksgiving. And so a lot of times we're in a hurry to try to get things cooked and get on the table. But there's also the time that's spent in the kitchen and preparing with your children or your grandchildren. And your grandchildren and your children remember that. I remember when I stood in the kitchen, so mom's thinking about, I got to get this, hurry up and get this done. Or grandma's thinking, but the grandchild or the child that's in there spending time and thinking, this is awesome. I love spending time and doing it. And sometimes just the time, the time is what's important.
And that's our society right now. It's the hurry up, and microwave society, I guess, and sometimes it's important for us to sit back and reflect. And we often, I think, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but we often don't do a very good job of slowing down and realizing the things that God has done for me. Thanksgiving is a good time to do that, but it shouldn't just be once a year.
Right.
It should be something that we do and we have time to reflect. And again, we're not under the old covenant here, but I think that's one of the reasons for setting up the Sabbath, the day of rest, is for them to reflect on what God has done for them. And this is kind of one of those occasions as well where they can kind of reflect on what's going on, and they even have a memorial of what's going on for them to take that time and reflect. And I think we would do well to follow that principle and take some time.
So.
And much like Thanksgiving, we're going to find out later on here in a little bit in the next chapter or two that not only is a thing a good memorial, but sometimes a day or a feast is a good memorial, and we'll see that with God's people as well.
You know, Ricky was talking about the priests. You know, I wonder what was going through the minds of those 12 men. You know, as they were told to go pick up a rock in the midst of, you know, you want me to go back out there? You know, so they're gonna, you know, I remember what happened when some other people were at the Red Sea. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
Am I in trouble? But you think about what was going through their mind and their memory. You know, not only did I pick up that rock and take it back to the camp, then I took it back and put it in the midst, and just that time spent is just so significant for that man. And then, you know, he passed that information on to his children and grandchildren of his experience of what took place that day.
Hey, before we leave verse 10, there's a couple of things in there I want us to look at. Notice that the priest stood there till everything was finished. Mm-hmm. Okay, God gave instructions because it says there, finished, that the Lord had commanded Joshua to speak to the people. So they went ahead, they did everything God told them to do. But now getting back to what we were talking about earlier about hurrying too much, notice what it says there at the end of verse 10. The people hurried and crossed over. So why do you think they hurried? Why did they hurry? I think it was because here's something God told us to do, so let's go ahead and do it. But I'm just wondering, did they remember what happened? Like you were saying, did they remember what happened and say, let's hurry and get across before that water does come?
And it may have been like, if you've ever seen the movie Far and Away, whenever they opened up the land rush and everybody's so excited to get out there and get their land, that may have been part of it too. Is it? But
hey, we're getting to go to the promised land.
Right.
We're excited about this.
That's true.
But either way, you know, if it's going back to the proof that God did this, if you normally had a river that just the water had quit, are you going to hurry across that? You know, what's going to be in the bottom of that riverbed? You know, you're going to be sinking down in the mud, and the fact that it was dry ground, they could hurry across.
They could hurry across, that's right.
Yeah, they weren't slogged down or whatever you want to say.
You know, again, I don't know what the visual is, but is there a big wall of water that you can physically see?
Well, it was heaped up.
Yeah,
And
it was
so
16 or 17 miles upriver. I don't know how high it would have.
How far
So
that
I don't know about you guys, but if they told me to walk across the river bed, and I look over here and all I see is this high wall of water, and it's not a dam. You know, there's no dam there holding it back. It's just water.
You're not going to tarry.
I'm not going to tarry very long because I don't know when that water is going to decide to come back down.
Yeah.
You know,
Lack of faith.
it might have been. You know, it might have been.
Compared to that water, we were like grasshoppers.
That's right.
All right, Jared, if you would read verses 11 through 13 for us, please.
Okay. And when all the people had finished passing over, the ark of the Lord and the priest passed over before the people. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh passed over, armed before the people of Israel, as Moses had told them. Verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
About 40,000 ready for war passed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho.
All right, I didn't plan that, but again, for second week in a row, we gave Jared all of the names to pronounce.
Yeah.
You know.
You're
So
welcome.
anyway,
You're welcome. The guy who has no mastery of English.
that's right. Well, this is Hebrew, so that helps. But what is the significance of what happens in these verses?
Well, I think that the people had completely crossed over. That means they all did what they were supposed to do. And then the ark of the Lord crossed over, my version says, in the presence of the people. So that the people could see. Mm-hmm. They had walked by the ark while it was in the water, or in the river, without the water. And then they get over there, and then the ark comes, and they can all see that. So that's a very visual thing that they see.
Mm-hmm. And along with the people, who's coming along with the tribes going into the promised land?
We've got those tribes that we mentioned earlier that had already claimed their land on that side of the
2.5 tribes. And that's significant because remember back in Joshua chapter 1, Joshua gave them that speech of, you need to remember you have a responsibility to help your brothers. Well, all of that 2.5 tribe didn't come, but who did come of the 2.5 tribe?
The 40,000 men ready for war.
That's right. So they're fulfilling that obligation to help them take the land that is there.
And this is something that they've never experienced, right? They've never been warriors.
That's right.
And so this is something completely new for them. And so I'm sure it's exciting, it's scary. There's all kinds of emotions here as they see all of this take place.
Well, and they've done some fighting on the east side of the river in the land that they've conquered. That is one of the significance of the 40 days, though. I mean, the 40 years, rather, not 40 days. 40 years is you've gone from a nation of slaves now to a nation of warriors. And just that kind of transition in the mindset of the people is significant. All right, verses 14 through 18, Aaron.
On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him, just as they had stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life. And the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests bearing the ark of the testimony to come up out of the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, come up out of the Jordan. And when the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the midst of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up on dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks as before.
Okay, so start off here with that first verse, verse 14. What's significant that's going? We talked about this a little bit last week, but what's significant that's happened here?
Well, again, it's Joshua taking over for Moses and putting Joshua in that role that Moses was, and it's indicating that here. Joshua, in the sight of all Israel, he's now that guy.
Yeah.
If you remember back in chapter 3 and verse 7, the Lord said, I will begin to exalt you among the people. And now we get over here, it says, on that day the Lord exalted Joshua. So now this chain of command is complete.
Yeah. And it takes you all the way back to chapter 1 and verse 5 when God told Joshua, I will be with you like I was with
And he told him to be strong and of good
Right.
courage.
But now he's showing the people
Yeah.
that's what's happening.
But I think we also see that the people recognize that, right?
They do.
Yes.
Because it says, as they stood in awe of Moses, now they stood in awe of Joshua. So the people are accepting his leadership also.
All right, so
And
why is
that's
that
significant.
important?
Well, you have to have people accepting it. You can't have a leader without followers.
That's right.
And so the people accept it. That's a great point.
And especially with what they're fixing to do. I mean, they're going through hard times. You think about battle and wars and that type of thing. It's easy to follow leaders in good times.
Right.
In difficult times, you really need to have that trust in your leadership.
And like Jared said, they weren't really warriors before, but now they're fixing to have to do that. And so this is a whole, yes, Joshua's in charge here, but this is kind of a different leadership role than what has happened before to a certain degree.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, the Ark of the Testimony. What are we talking about a different something here? What's the Ark of the Testimony?
Well, different phrases are used. Ark of the Covenant, Ark of Testimony, Ark of the Lord. Different phrases
right.
are used, or terms, and it's the same thing.
Yeah. And of course the commands are one of the things that are in the cabinet there. So
why do you, this is me just wondering, I don't know if they're wondering that too, why do you think they use different phrases like that?
that's what I was going to ask next. Why would he use
I don't
Ark
know
of
the
the
answer to that
Testimony here? What's the significance of what's going
Well,
on?
the testimony would be the Ten Commandments,
Uh-huh.
and they're inside it. And so you need to follow God's laws. And I think that's what he's talking about
Yeah.
there.
Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say the other part of that is the significance of showing God's power. You know, and that's proof of God's power.
And you just got through them talking about that the priests did everything that God had commanded. And as long as they do, that was the agreement they made, remember at Sinai, was you do what I say, you be my people, I'll be your God, and that type of thing. So,
You know, Jared, you were talking earlier about the visual when the water was backed up, if they could see that. Imagine the visual in the end of verse 18 when the water comes back.
and when did it come back?
Rushing.
As soon as the priest bearing the ark got out of the water.
So you're talking 16, 17 miles upriver, and the last soul comes out. How could that timing work out
Yeah.
just so?
Yeah. It's no coincidence.
I mean, it's only through the power of God. But
That's right.
just imagine standing around and watch that.
The we talk about the visual a lot. Imagine the sound.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The rushing water and it just coming.
You know, it wouldn't be that
That was it.
like when
Sorry.
you're at the beach and that gentle no, see
Yeah.
I'm doing the lapping here.
Right.
The gentle lapping of the water, it's not that. It would be a rush of water
Yeah.
as it all came back down. And notice it says there, it overflowed its banks as before.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of water that came down through there.
That's right. That's right. All right.
This would be awesome to see.
Yeah, it would have. Let's read, Rick, if you would, verses 19 through 24.
Now the people came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they camped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal. Then he spoke to the children of Israel, saying, When your children ask their fathers in time to come, What are these stones? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel crossed over this Jordan on dry land, for the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up before us until we had crossed over, that all the peoples of the earth may know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever.
Okay, so first of all, he tells us when this happens. They get to the place where they're going, coming up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. Does anyone remember the significance of that date?
Well, the 15th day of the first month was Passover, right?
Okay.
When they came out of Egypt. They're back in Exodus 12. So we're like 5 days short of being 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 5 days they're going to observe the Passover.
That's
but they're
right.
going to observe the Passover in the Promised Land.
Yeah. And we find out that as they observed the Passover through the years, the 10th day is when they would select the Passover lamb to get ready for that, which is going to set us up for chapter 5 coming up here. But so again, you've got this Red Sea Moses connection of the
He points it
Passover.
out.
And we're just still continuing to see how God's putting all that together for them. And again, he talks about the children. I think about, here he says, when your children ask. And I think about Deuteronomy 6, and when we discuss that, about how, it's all these, you look for teaching moments to point your children toward God, right?
Yeah, I think that they're obviously connected here, that Deuteronomy 6 passage, and trying to come up with opportunities to teach your children. And obviously, this is one of those opportunities for them to say, hey, look what God did for us. And again, pointing to our lives, families that have children, you got to find those opportunities, not find them, they're already there. You got to take those opportunities to do that with your kids.
And that's the key. I can remember sitting in Homer Weatherford's floor on a Sunday night, drinking the little cups, what was left over from the Lord's Supper that night, drinking that grape juice, And I didn't understand that significance, but I could remember, why do we take the Lord's Supper? Mm-hmm. Why do we use bread and grape juice? And whenever your children ask you those questions, those memorials set up times for us, because they're going to question. That's the one thing kids are great at is asking questions, right?
Well, and obviously we just, on Jenny's family, we just had her grandfather that passed away, and we were at the cemetery, and I think I'm okay sharing this story, but her dad passed away when we were in college, and so he has a gravestone that's carved with his information on it, and then Jenny's mom is still living, but her name is on it, and all of the grandkids, my kids and Jenny's sister and brother, their kids, were standing around that gravestone and wondering why Grammy's name is on the stone. But it's a good way to talk about their grandfather that they've never met because he passed away before they were alive. Again, it's a memorial to remember those events, and we were able to talk about him with them because of that moment.
And the memorial especially, I love the way this chapter ends because we've talked about previously that the story in Joshua is not about the children of Israel versus the inhabitants of the land. It's God versus the inhabitants of the land. And as much as we're showing Joshua is the new Moses, he's the new leader, ultimately who gets the honor for all of this?
God.
See, and that's the thing that we have to remember in all that we do is ultimately it's about
God.
His praise and His glory. And there's nothing wrong with commenting, Ricky had a great Bible class or Jared did a good job with the devotional, whatever, but ultimately it's God that should get the glory of, when Aaron baptizes somebody, it's God that brought them to salvation, not that we just bring them to Jesus and let Him do His work. So, all right, what else about chapter 4 sticks out to you? Anything?
Well, that last verse there, it says, so that all the peoples of the earth may know. We've been talking about the Israelites, and we talked about the memorial that was set up for them to teach their children. But it's not just for them. It's for all the peoples of the earth, that they may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. Again, applicable to us in that it can't just be, yes, it's important that we teach our kids, it's important that our families are faithful, but it can't just be about our kids and our families. It has to be us going out and telling them about the things that we know that make the Lord mighty, that help us fear the Lord our God.
Being a light to the nations.
Right.
Yep. Which is the thing she talked about, or that's talked about there, is the same thing Rahab said about the people of the nation. The spies said about and now you're seeing it come to pass. So we talk about memorials from a spiritual standpoint. What's some memorials that we think about?
Well, I was going to say that I think the first thing we think about is Memorial Day. It's one of those big ones that kind of jump out at us as far as the nation goes, to remember our fallen soldiers and all that they've sacrificed for our freedom.
Right.
But within us as Christians, one of the memorials we think about is the Lord's Supper.
Okay.
That we do every Sunday to remember what's been done for us.
Yeah. And why are we remembering what the Lord has done for us?
Because that's how we're saved.
That's right.
Because that's what takes us from the wilderness of sin through the water to the promised land.
It's the same thing. It's the same theme over and over again.
Exactly.
To show for His death until He returns, right?
Right.
So that we can all remember how mighty the Lord is, that He's defeated sin, He's conquered sin, and that we might fear the Lord and then submit to it.
Isn't that neat?
It is.
You know what I mean? It's just neat to see that. When we sit down and we really start looking at that, exploring that thought, it's just an amazing thing.
It really is. So that's, in a nutshell, Joshua chapter 4, and we hope that you'll keep tuning into these classes each Sunday evening. We hope that you will like and share them on Facebook so that others can find them as well, and that if you've missed some, you can go back and study the previous studies that we've had together. Hope you remember Wednesday night Bible study coming up at 6:30 to 7:15, and then worship with us next Sunday morning. If we can help you, if we can minister to you, if there's things that you have questions about, we'd love for you to send them in a private message, comment down below. We love, if we don't know the answer, we'll study and try to figure it out and help you. But that's what we're here for, all four of us, is to minister to you and to help you. So if we can do that, then please let us do that. All right, Ricky, if you would, won't you let us in a prayer?
Our Father in heaven, thank you for this opportunity that we have through these means to study from your word. Father, we thank you for the Old Testament, the things that you did there that helped your people then, but also had lessons contained in them for us today. Father, thank you for the New Testament, which tells us the way of salvation so that we can come to you. Father, please be with us as we seek to serve you. And Father, please be with the Martin congregation and other congregations of your people, that we may remain strong through difficult times. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen.